To our last panel that proposes the expansion of the environmentally responsible infrastructure in Brazil and the opportunities for cities to overcome structural challenges that are historical by means of climate financing. Also, we'll examine the issues and opportunities relative to the future of cities and the paths for environmental, economic, and social terms, and also explore the role of the NDFS, and the main financing of public and projects in the long term. We'd like to call Mrs. Saskia Berling, Director of the KfW Development Bank. Also like to invite the President of Fonplata, Mrs. Luciana Botafogo. The President of Badesul, Mr. Claudio Gastal. And the General Manager of the Strategic Unit for the Public Sector of the Banco Brasil, Mr. Marcio Chiumento. And the comments will be done by the Director President from the Fomento, Paraná, Mr. Heraldo Alves das Neves. Okay, and continuing, we are in this last conversation, and we have some final considerations to close this meeting. Now that we're all prepared for this moment, let's hand the floor to the commentator, Mr. Heraldo. Good afternoon to all. It's a pleasure to be here once more. I had the opportunity to talk a bit about this important partnership, ABDE UNDP, in terms of the methodology of the diagnostics of our actions and associations with the objectives for sustainable development. No less important in this last panel of the day, but let's talk a little bit about the future of our cities and in relation to some important points, but especially to discuss the financing, the transition to low carbon economy of our cities and the infrastructure of our cities. And it's important to register, and it's also something that was dealt this morning. We noticed a strong migratory, and it's still important and still happening in the year 2000. In the 70s, we had migratory movements and some movements in the south of Brazil, to the north and center-west of the country, migratory movements from the northeast, south-southeast. Means that we had the reading of the check, that the instruments of planning of our municipalities especially had of the pressure of these populations in terms of basic infrastructures. So these movements, and these ended up generating a strong urban density in our main cities, and this meant that the populations that were arriving had problems of locating their houses when they got to our cities, to locate themselves to the margin of the social apparatus of the main instruments that the municipalities have to offer minimum conditions to our migrant populations. And from this advancing, a very strong housing pressure, not only but also some punctual interferences from our planners and city managers, meaning that primary populations that got first to these also had to seek other locations for their housing. And bringing some elements of our census carried out in 2022, now we have, and some data are very important, we almost have half of our population, almost 100 million people, living in big cities with population over 500 million people, cities that 70 cities in our country have over this number. We have an important density in cities. We have 100 million people in smaller cities, and we have a strong location of people, which is reducing every year, in 1,000 to 500, sorry, in cities, a rural city called rural, where they have under 1,000 inhabitants, using a typology of people who live in rural environments. And I put here a additional problematic, besides our prioritization of our instruments, our credit policies to better deal with these populations in these cities. We have to concern ourselves with the issues related to the decarbonization of our economy, to put instruments of urban mobility and low carbon. So I have the audacity of adding this problematic of financing resources from our institutions, also for the issues related to intelligence or smart cities, and also keeping this concern about that we have to offer the basic conditions to deal with all the population, but especially in the big cities, and to keep and to work our populations in the rural means. We have in our cities that do not have connection, any asphalt. We have connectivity problems. High speed internet doesn't reach there. We have over 5,000 municipalities in our countries. So it was very important to hear the contribution from our panelists. Firstly, greeting Saskia Berling, our director for Brazil of the KfW, an important partner in the country and of the national system. Many decades in Brazil, an important portfolio of credit, some $1 billion in our economy, resources offered in the south and north of Brazil, and also in financing. And so it would be important to hear your contributions in this view that it is necessary for Brazil to focus its attention to the basic structures, but to think of the cities and the future of our cities. Saskia, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you, Heraldo. Good afternoon to all. Eu sou Saskia Berling, da KfW. I apologize for my Portuguese. I still need this to speak. Firstly, I'd like to thank the invitation of the ABDE to participate in this forum. And it's a pleasure to be part of one of the greatest events of the country, with the theme on the financing for sustainable development, the main focus of the actions of the KfW in Brazil. I like to talk about and what we can offer as a financial partner for sustainable development in Brazil. We are the development bank of the Federal Republic of Germany, and now we are 75 years. Our main headquarters in Germany. We have 80 branches all over the world with 8,000 collaborators. And we are only 8 in Brazil. Cooperation between Germany and Brazil already has 60 years of age, and we are the financial branch of that cooperation. With focal points, we have the protection of the tropical forests, urban development, and sanitation, energy efficiency, and urban mobility. We have contracts and financial contributions in €1 billion or more than 7 billion reais. And the main contributors, as cities are the greatest contributors to climate change problems, but at the same time, the cities are the main victims of climate change, having into account that 80% of the population lives in urban zones, and the tendency of these numbers will increase. It's fundamental that actions be carried out that promote more resilient cities. In that sense, Brazil, in the sustainable urban development, sanitation, urban mobility, energy efficiency that is inclusive, fair transition, and gender issues. We are supporting that cities be more inclusive, more resilient, more sustainable, and safe. In the area of sanitation, our exemplary examples are Sanepar in Paraná and in Minas Gerais, other companies. 50 to 60 million euros, and the measure of these projects have the rehabilitation of these sanitation or sewage treatment stations, the construction of new stations, and we promote mitigation actions, like, for example, the collection and the use of biogas emitted in the treatment of the effluents. Our projects are always accompanied with capacity building measures and institutional reinforcement for the improvement of operational quality and to include gender equality issues. In mobility, we already concluded transport projects like the metro in Salvador and in Rio that are part of a refinancing credit line with the BNDES. We invest in projects in Recife, Guarulhos, Recife, Curitiba, and Salvador that promote the reduction of greenhouse gases, mobility technologies, integration of means of transport that contribute to a more efficient system and that bring social economic benefits and to the health of the population. We are certain that urban mobility is a key element for a social transformation that is fair, be it in the environmental issue as well as inclusion of marginalized people and women's security. Actions that promote more security, adequate public illumination, wagons only for women, among others. We always seek to promote in our projects sustainable development and adaptation to climate change, like, for example, in Porto Alegre, we have a project for urban requalification, urban drainage, sewage, housing, and other to guarantee safer locations and more resilient locations. The Brazilian cities, through our loans, followed by non-reimbursable funds and ample experience of technical assistance through KfW and GIZ that is part of the German corporation. And to give a little bit more of detail, we can offer different products like donations, very reduced interest rates, and with very favorable conditions. Credits can have a value 50 to 500 million euros, and we can offer in euros and US dollars, unfortunately not in reais, with a minimum counterpart of 20%. The interest rate can be fixed or variable, long-term, or can be put up to 15 years with a grace period of up to 5 years, and the importance of a climate change that is fair for all. The social challenges, environment, and related to the employment of a fair transition has many dimensions, like the loss of jobs, requalification of the labor force, the redistributive effects of decarbonization, and the protection of social rights and of citizens' rights, and that these mitigation rights of climate without other actions will accentuate social inequalities. So in that sense, to strengthen also groups that are more vulnerable, like women, that will be directly impacted by the effects of the transition. That's why we finance specific measures against energy poverty and for transport, supporting and easing accessibility, as well as the costs of low-carbon technologies for low-income families. This is only viable and realistic with the engagement of all, and we of the KfW have the interest and availability to support in this fair transition. Thank you very much for your attention. So we thank you, Saskia. Important expressions coming from you. We understand from some conversations that we had here before we started this meeting, the availability of the KfW Bank of increasing double their portfolio of financing to Brazilian projects. This is important, especially from this directive related to mobility, requalification of the labor force, and also gender policies, employing more women, that women be more entrepreneurs. This is fully associated to the Brazilian policy that has instruments of credit. Thank you for your considerations. Now we will hear our president from Fonplata, Mrs. Luciana Botafogo. It's a pleasure to have you here. Fonplata is an important partner of the Brazilian government and also of our national system for development, and is in the country since the 70s. Is that right, Luciana? In the first moment as a financing fund, and now as a bank, a development bank that works beyond the countries that are in the River Plate and beyond this universe of these three countries, and it's also important for Latin America. The Fonplata is a specific partner here in my city, Curitiba. There was a strong investment from you in the sense of requalifying families that were in situations of vulnerability and risk, and a very important area, and we had a very successful experience with you. I would now like to hand over to Miss Luciana for her speech.
Thank you very much, Heraldo, for the presentation. Thank you, ABDE. Thank you to my fellow panelists, all of the colleagues that I have here. and so that we meet in the events. As was mentioned, Fonplata is a bank. We are present in the 5 countries that are part of the Plata region, even though we're not only working along the Prata River. We have already gone to the north, to the Amazon, to Acre. So the Amazon is essential for the Prata Basin, because if you deforest the Amazon, the rivers that feed all of the air that comes from the rain, and so it feeds the basin. We cannot separate one thing from the other. Yes, we're looking for more member states so that we can strengthen the Fonplata a lot, and we don't want many countries to participate, because then our governance is going to become very complex. What is the uniqueness of Fonplata? Fonplata is a small bank that aims to continue being small because of its structure, but we are a bank that is extremely agile. This is our main unique characteristic, since we are in the south, in the global south. It's not only in the south of Brazil. So we are a Mercosur bank, let's say it this way. We are close to our clients, and we are experts in carrying out a certain coordination, a coordination between the larger funders and the municipalities and the states and the people who render services in these 5 member states. And we have the capacity to know the needs of the member states. So we obviously fund all of our projects. They are aligned with the SDGs. We are also very concerned with the climate change impacts. The KfW is one of our funders. We have a partnership with the IDB, now with the World Bank. We are negotiating a collateral with the CAF that was here on the previous panel. So we gather money and funds from all of these large players, and we use the funds for specific purposes regarding climate change, energy efficiency, water resources, sanitation, everything that our dear friend Saskia has just mentioned. But we do that in a more integrated way and adjusted to the needs of our members. Mainly in Brazil, we are talking about the municipalities. Our portfolio is very large. In the COFIEX line, we had Renata talking about the time that it takes for COFIEX to approve things. So we have about a dozen projects in the COFIEX line. They start entering the pipeline, and then we have 2, 3, 4 projects, 2, 3, 4 municipalities, and we have a line for December, for January, so that we can make these resources circulate and flow in a fast way, in an agile way. And I would like to attract your attention to the following. We have to be extra careful when we are funding municipalities. On one hand, we have to strengthen their institutions so that we can have a project bank. Some municipalities that have been working with us for quite some time, they are in the 2nd tier, in the 3rd tier. They start preparing the projects and they leave them in a line without having to borrow a lot of money, 100 million reais, 200 million reais, because this becomes very expensive for the municipality. At the bank, it's complicated for us to share cheap money, okay, if it is local, if we are talking about local funds. But sometimes it's difficult because the money is just staying there. It's just there. And money that doesn't move around is expensive money. And so if you don't use those resources, these resources, they start becoming expensive. And then it becomes expensive for the municipality. And sometimes they cannot execute their projects. And why not? Because they don't have projects that are ready to be bidded, or for them to promote a public bidding. So we need the funders and we need to strengthen the executors so that they can have a project bank that are agile. And Fonplata supports these municipalities a lot. That's why our average ticket is lower. So we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, so that they can move these resources. This is the first point. Another aspect is that we have specific lines that are cheaper to include the gender issues into the project. We have cheaper lines to fund green initiatives if they have adaptation to climate change, because we can collect these resources in a cheaper way with the KfW, etc. But we have to be very flexible to understand that a municipality cannot do everything 100% green, 100% aimed at the gender issue, because the demands of that municipality, they go beyond. Mainly in our countries, it goes way beyond this agenda. This agenda is necessary, it is essential, but it is complementary to the municipality's other needs. And we encourage a lot the use of these resources. So a basic example, let's imagine that we're going to create a bus corridor. So by itself, it is connected to the green agenda, because the bus corridor diminishes the number of cars on the street. So we diminish the greenhouse gas emissions. And so the bus stops, they should have a panic button, the right lighting. We should strengthen now. In Paraíba, we created apps so that women can have access to the internet at the bus stop if they are being harassed, if there is danger. How do you say this in Portuguese? Harassment, assédio. Harassment. So this kind of thing we can add, but I cannot force a municipality when they are creating this project to have all of the project focus on that, because maybe they need health care, maybe they want to build a building, maybe they want to solve a market thing. So when we talk about municipal projects supporting cities, we cannot only think about one sector. We must have an integrated view of the municipality and its demands. We should always offer innovations whenever possible, always move on to a green agenda, sustainability agenda, to use renewable energy. All of that we do. And we can create a financial mix and say, look, this is going to be easier for you. This credit line is going to be cheaper for you. This credit line is going to be a little more expensive. And then we can add everything and create a mix. Now, Brazil hasn't done this yet, but in Uruguay, we have just signed 2 contracts that even have flexible conditions, financial conditions that are flexible. They can pay using bullets, and then the municipality decides what to do. But the most important lesson I would like to share with you, because my time is up, is to be flexible. Understand the demands of your borrower so that you can cover all of the demands without presenting to them a closed package with your own agenda. Otherwise, the municipality is going to be tied down. Sometimes they get a larger loan because they want to do this, they want this green credit line that is cheaper, and then they end up getting more resources so that they can meet the demands that they have. That's it. Thank you very much. Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Luciana. Your comments were very important, and now we also have an example in the state of Paraná. In Paraná, our main portfolio is to fund our municipalities. Besides the difficulties that we face, to make these projects feasible and to really make the resources flow in the economy. We also fund. The greatest difficulty is the conception, the designing of the projects. Even though inside the state we have a structure and we try to help. We have the Paraná Cidade, and they help the municipalities to design their projects. But what are these projects? Most of them to meet their government demands. The mayors, they want resources to pave their roads, for highway equipment, for in most of the municipalities, they are not trying to add the decarbonization of their municipalities or states or the green economy. And so they sometimes prioritize the women, but they don't focus on gender products mostly. Another point that I would like to add, because we have been seeing some mayor demonstrations here in Brazil. So we have a serious tax collection problem. Most of the municipalities in the country, they face this problem, a tax collection problem. We're starting to see problems to pay off the loans that they have gotten because they have lost tax collection, and we hope that this is only temporary. We have gathered fund from the municipality fund, the federal government sharing resources with our municipalities, the states also from the ICMS, this tax. So we are facing some difficulties in paying off our debts. And I believe we're gonna have, it's gonna be difficult for us to pay for projects. We hope that this is gonna be temporary and that it's not gonna go beyond this quarter. And we hope that our fiscal situation is going to improve. Let's pass the floor now. Let's try to understand the contributions from the Bank of Brazil. The Bank of Brazil is a very important bank. So the Bank of Brazil is important. It is the main rural credit operator in Brazil. It's the second largest bank in Brazil in terms of its results, okay, because it has important work. And so they manage current accounts for individuals, for companies. They invest in rural endeavors, urban endeavors, and they are very important for our national development system. So, Marco Antonio, you are the general manager of the public sector department. So, talk about the future of our cities. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, my dear fellow panelists, members from the ABDE, guests. It's a great honor for us to be here, taking part in this event and discussing the results that the bank has been reaching and what is the main strategy that we have defined for the medium run and the long run, and what the bank has. It is an important channel to distribute public funds so that we can have sustainable development and social development. First question, how can a commercial bank and investment bank such as the Bank of Brazil can support the social development of our country? What is the connection between the carbon credit and a bank? So the Bank of Brazil is a federal organization. Our capillarity is huge. We are present in over 93% of our municipalities. We have over 4,000 bank branches all over Brazil, and one of our main guidelines is investing resources, be it public resources or the bank's own funds, so that we can invest in essential products, essential services, sewage treatment or sanitation. So we have a huge portfolio when it comes to these social investments, and we apply not only in public organizations but also in the private sector. So we have specific lines, credit lines for individuals, for companies, for solar panels, for the installation of solar panels, wind plants, wind energy plants, how to reduce the CO2 emissions. And we also have rural credits. And we have the participation of 60% of the market in our credit portfolio. We also have a credit portfolio for low carbon initiatives. So the Bank of Brazil already adopts an SDG policy. We have a project that is called the BB30 Agenda, BB30 Agenda, with commitments the bank has assumed, using public resources through social initiatives, gender initiatives. And on Monday, we launched the Woman FCO, which is a program for women. The interest rates are smaller, the deadlines are longer, so we also work with equity, gender equity. When it comes to numbers, only regarding sustainable credit, our credit is beyond 1 trillion reais. And the SG program involves over 2 billion reais. And we have a portfolio for these investments. We also capture resources, we create investment portfolios, we invest in green projects, we have the LCA, the LCI, and we also invest in sustainable rural initiatives. When it comes to the low carbon economy, besides funding the agriculture ourselves to reduce the CO2 emissions and also to protecting our natural resources better, recently we have launched the PEC that is going to use 600 billion reais to invest in highway infrastructure, sewage treatment, etc. Regarding the funding of infrastructure for cities, analyzing the future of cities, how is the Bank of Brazil working? We have a specific credit line for energy efficiency. It's called PEM, and we fund public agencies regarding their public lighting projects, electrical buses, and everything is connected to a program that is called Smart Cities, in which we try to integrate the entire system, the entire infrastructure of a city, and connect it to a digital system. Technology connected to data intelligence, and so that city hall can be supported, that state can be supported, how to better make our resources flow, and how can we best use these resources. And so we help people have a better management capacity, checking out our individuals, and so that they can have a journey that is more connected to their cities. We have 5 axes that we deal with in these smart cities, which is the mobility axis, urban axis, technology, energy. Okay, we work mainly on these 5 axes. Regarding the mobility, I'm not going to mention all of the examples, but when it comes to mobility, we have a project that is already a pilot project in 5 Brazilian cities, and we offer them digital payment possibilities if they're going to use our public transportation, connectivity on these buses, and also the funding of these electrical buses. And the public manager can dimension its structures better, and he can better apply. Who is riding on those buses? Who is riding on these streets? So we have information about their age, ethnicity, and we're also better qualifying their professionals. So this program aims to promote better public management and also a better journey for the citizens. And by doing all of this, we can conclude by saying that this connection between a public bank and public sectors and the citizen, everybody's going to win with that. The citizen is going to win because his quality of life improves, of her quality. The public sector wins, and the Bank of Brazil also wins because we can become a greater protagonist, okay? And we have the SDG. The SDGs in the center of everything we do. We are trying to achieve good results, and we were the bank that had the best results last year, and we also render high quality services. We have the lowest complaint levels in Brazil.
So that's it. To make an integration of the system, the equipments, technological equipments, crossing data, information that improves public management, and that's how we believe in the future of the cities. We thank you, Marco. This important, your manifestation, your expression of some products that we don't have full knowledge is always opportune of the bank in terms of assets, an important dimension. You are champions in this dimension. Also like to highlight the importance of Banco do Brasil in terms of development, the NDFS to help the development. You have credit lines for the Pro Invest. It was an important program for some programs. Once more, talking about Paraná, we got social capital coming from this intermediary program. You were important in the crucial moment of the pandemic. You get a guarantee fund that gave us support to this important program, and you offered to their entrepreneurs of their bases of action from Pronamp. We certainly had a maintenance of some millions of economic activities, especially of micro and small business. So to register the importance, the minimum level of activity here in our country. Also to highlight, also finishing here, in what you offered, another important movement that is a proposal. We received you with the vice presidency in Paraná and visiting our governor, and a role of possibilities, that we will work in partnership, a pioneering partnership, Paraná and Banco do Brasil, in terms of those resources, the interfinancial deposit. The commercial bank works with these resources from lines, or stays without any kind, just they stops at the central bank earning nothing. So it's very important to get these. Having said that, let's go to our last but not least panelist. The Mr. Claudio Gastal, from the president of Badesul, in what he has to offer in this theme that involves this panel. It's an important collaboration in the Rio Grande do Sul. He acted here in Brasilia, also in the condition as the secretary and management. You, together with the Rio Grande do Sul experiment, did an important work in the Rio Grande do Sul. and now with us in substitution of always Mrs. Lontra, the ex-president of Badesul, that we had the privilege as having the first women directory of association. Welcome. Feel free. I I hope I'm not the last one just because I'm the youngest, but I was in reality thinking here financing of a low carbon infrastructure, sustainable urban interventions. We're talking about resilient cities, but I'd like to congratulate you. You are resilient up to this moment. We're 2 days that are very intense, over 70 speakers from my quick quick counting here. And to get to the last panel, I believe that many of you, there will be your 10 longest minutes of your life, and it will be my 10 minutes with everyone wanting to leave. But I would like to get two hooks, but not specific issues of Badesul, but we're talking about people that live in this system and know this. Badesul has a characteristic of financing of municipalities, sustainable, that finance projects that meet the SDGs, like all projects that we do the analysis. But I want to take on two hooks when we are talking about infrastructure, low carbon infrastructure. Two items in the previous panel, cities and investment. And a third item that was put on by our president from Fonplata, the institutional capability of the municipalities. We have 496 municipalities at the federal level, so that we might reach what in the SDGs in our 2030 agenda, what is put in the COPs of zeroing of carbon emissions until 2050. This is in the order of trillions. The need of investments, not only of the public sector, but the private sector as well, like mentioned in the previous panels, and a process of rearrangement of a new governance of the multilateral actors. It's no good to do our role for the emission of low carbon and to reach of the SDGs agenda if our partners in Korea, Japan, or Africa are not doing theirs as well. So the type of objective should be of the humanity and not of some actors. So this systemic vision of the challenge and global governance is fundamental. Global systems, this global finance system, the political system, and the position of governments in geopolitical way in terms of facing these issues. And where does this happen? In municipalities, like the Paraná Fomento. We talk about the municipalities of Brazil is in the order of 115. And 150 or over 200,000 inhabitants. We have great population concentration, but like the SDG says, we cannot leave others behind. So the other 5,000 will have to come independently of where they are. And despite if we don't think there isn't a lot of environmental impact in these small municipalities, for an issue put by our president, the institutional incapability of these municipalities. It's no shame to assume this. In my state, we saw this. The institutional capability of these small municipalities is very small. And there's a function where the agents have to have not only of credit, but of new ways of technical assistance to grab by the hand those neighbors and those communities or those municipalities and to get them to a more appropriate financing. So what happens what I saw in things that happen in the south when I talk to the mayors about credit projects and financing projects. What is coming will be an asphalt and has nothing to do of infrastructure of low carbon. And the connection between two municipalities that is totally necessary in this agenda, which is very short term with a medium term. I wouldn't even say medium, but short term, that is sustainability. I think this role, we had 5 minutes, okay, we only have 5 minutes, okay, of the assistance to bring the municipalities that have small capability to have a clearer vision. Not only the municipality, the mayor has low capability, but the people in that municipality don't have the awareness, the maturity to ask from their municipality. It's something that seems that happens on the other side of the world. Rio Grande do Sul, like other states, but we had for the first time some climate events that were totally far or outside of our reality of extratropical cyclones. So now the reality is knocking on our door, and the cyclone took everything. Now we need the housing, the asphalt, everything of basic infrastructure. But we also need, in a way, a process of awareness to create this basic infrastructure. So I don't want to tire you with a portfolio, but to bring a little bit of a reflection. The challenge is very big, and of the whole system, not only in terms of credit, but in rethinking in how will we do to get to the small municipalities that effectively has people and what happens and the small problems that happen there and the challenges of the SDGs, and especially in low emission. Okay, we have 2 minutes. No, you didn't spend everything. You didn't spend all your minutes. So welcome once more to our system. It's a pleasure to have you here. Badesul for us is a reference, is one of the two big development agencies. In Paraná, we imitated you, especially moves regarding joining resources. We like to implement this model within our state. Agricultural credit, your reference, and as a model, we think that in Paraná, in September, we are also going into. So it's important in your vision that it combines, it's fully associated to all the speeches here, technical orientation, multilateral financing, and in Fomento, we know and we go into chorus that is important in our small municipalities. And many municipalities below 1,000 inhabitants that do not have the technical support before and after the process. And it's important your contribution, and I wish for Badesul success in this organic change that you're finishing now. This reform is important. We intend, that is an intention of Badesul and their managers to offer the greatest range of Badesul and to fulfill its finality. Congratulations for your work in Rio Grande do Sul. We finished this first block. We have 5 minutes. Any issues to be registered? Let's go to the final considerations, and let's start with Saskia, our director from the KfW. Thank you. To mention a last aspect In the beginning of this year, our Chancellor Scholz, he visited Brazil and he agreed with President Lula that the partnership between Brazil and Germany will intensify. It's a strategic partnership and they will meet in Berlin. And we hope that from this meeting that issues will advance and more impulse to this partnership for a fair transition between Brazil and Germany as an objective. Of course, of course, we would like to increase our portfolio in areas of protection of the tropical forest and urban sustainable development, sanitation, urban mobility, and energy efficiency. I'm here 2 more years, so feel free to get in contact with us, and we are very interested to see the partnership, to make any partnership with you. Let's hear in sequence the final considerations from our Luciana Botafogo. Here is just in this 2 minutes the initiative, the ABDE, and the importance of this initiative. Latin America is in the eye of the hurricane, not the hurricane per se, because we do have climate change adverse effects, but the world is looking at Latin America or South America. We are a group that we have our differences, our conflicts, but we are a peaceful region, producer of foods, very rich in energy, minerals, and the region that has the greatest amount condition to make this transition to a low carbon economy and to contribute to this global agenda. That's why Germany, European Union, China, the whole world is looking at our region. So what do we need to do? And the ABDE has its role in terms of we have to organize. All our resources are not enough, not only public, not only private, to solve this transition. So we have to be very efficient before we are able, with the few resources we have, to be effective and to be able to translate these resources to strengths in the municipalities and states in order to change the governance and so that we be less necessary in the long term, that the countries are able to organize to make this transition. We have to be planting these seeds, but after this transition, it has to be done by the countries themselves. So we have to use this moment that is crucial and very important for our region. Very well, very well, well remembered. The Amazon as standing forest is very important as well, including for the sustainability of the populations that are in that biome. But we also have other biomes that deserve attention. The Atlantic biome, the semi-arid Cerrado, the Pantanal. These are important biomes that can be commercially explored. Very well, thank you. Now let's go, as we started, to hear Marco Antonio for his final considerations. Once more, I'd like to thank you for this presence and in terms of good best practice, and that I still dream where panels where public entities, all development banks, the big public banks, development agencies, for an orchestration of the best application of those resources, not dividing areas but joining areas, and to get the best for the population. Thank you very much. And finally, to the final contribution, I would like to thank and thank you for your reception, your hospitality. you can count on us for the challenges for all of us. Thank you. Well, guys, thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity. The last panel, and thanks to all.